Let's switch over to a live press conference happening outside the Harvey Weinstein courtroom in New York. That's celebrity attorney Gloria Allred, who represents several of Harvey Weinstein's accusers.
That the LA DA filed yesterday, and that the defense said it's hard to believe it was a coincidence that the LA DA filed yesterday. That the criminal investigation in Los Angeles has been going on for 2 years, which is true. And the defense argued that there was prejudice to Mr. Weinstein. Ultimately, the court said that just being arrested is meaningless, that the jury is going to be instructed that being arrested for a crime is meaningless. But the court also said to the defense that if they want to explore that, in other words, whether there is prejudice with the potential jurors, that they can do so. So we'll see whether or not they do so, and whether or not they take the court's suggestion that they can write an instruction or question to the jury and submit it to the court, and we'll see if it's included. But my point of view is this: whether or not there is prejudice, the real question is, what's the remedy? And the remedy is that inquiring, that is, voir dire, of potential jurors as to whether they can be fair and impartial is appropriate. And then it's for both sides to decide whether a juror can be fair and impartial. But I don't think that that should be a basis for delaying the trial, because from a victim's point of view, often justice delayed is justice denied. And whether that's for a week or a month, this case has been going on long enough in New York, and my feeling is it should proceed. It is proceeding. It is not going to be delayed, and I'm glad about that. In addition, the district attorney this morning made a motion to remand Mr. Weinstein into custody, arguing that he has sold some real estate, 2 parcels of real estate, essentially arguing that with the new charges filed in LA that potentially there's a flight risk. The court did not decide to remand Mr. Weinstein into custody. The court, however, was not happy with Mr. Weinstein texting in the courtroom, which I witnessed. I also witnessed that previously when Mr. Weinstein was sitting essentially on the same row but across the aisle from me on another occasion. And at that occasion, Mr. Weinstein was not only texting while he was sitting in the gallery waiting to be called to the counsel table, but even when he went up to the counsel table, he continued to text. At that point, the court ordered him not to have phones in the courtroom and not to text again in the courtroom. So the court raised that issue on its own this morning. I witnessed, and obviously court personnel witnessed, Mr. Weinstein texting in the gallery and brought that to the court's attention. The court personnel brought it to the court's attention, and the court was not pleased. The court was very upset and, basically asked Mr. Weinstein, to really think about this, never to bring phones into his courtroom again, unless he wants to consider being remanded back into custody. It's going to be a violation, and it could lead to his being taken into custody. So the court was very clear and very direct and very firm about that. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, either about this morning or anything else.
So first of all, the defense attorneys are arguing that there's no way Mr. Weinstein is going to get an impartial jury. What are your thoughts there? I'm sure that's not going to be your defense. What do you think about their claims that he's not going to be able to have a fair and impartial trial?
Well, I mean, I think he can have a fair and impartial trial. Obviously, this is all being raised by the defense, most likely with the hope that if, as, and when Mr. Weinstein would be convicted, that it would be a ground for appeal, that he could not get a fair and impartial jury. It remains to be seen whether he can get a fair and impartial jury. It remains to be seen whether or not he would be convicted. We don't know. So, again, the defense has an opportunity to question potential jurors to determine if they can be fair and impartial. And then it'll be for the defense to make an argument as to why someone should be excused and why they cannot be fair and impartial if they feel that it's necessary to make that argument to excuse them for cause. So we'll see. It does, again, just because they know about the trial, just because they've heard about Mr. Weinstein, just because they've heard that he's been arrested, because a person is arrested doesn't mean they're guilty. It just means they've been arrested. They have a right to be presumed innocent unless and until they are found guilty in a court of law. The same is true in an employment situation. Just because somebody's arrested doesn't mean that they should be denied employment, because it doesn't mean that they're guilty. Well, and I can't speak for the DA's office as to why they did it yesterday in LA. But from Mr. Weinstein's point of view, is there ever a good time for the Los Angeles County District Attorney to file 2 felony charges against him? Probably not. Do I think Mr. Weinstein is a flight risk? I have no way of knowing whether he is or not. I think it's fair to make the argument, but it doesn't mean that he will, in fact, be thinking of fleeing or flee.
You spoke about it before, but can you just touch on again, they were pushing for this delay because of what happens in LA.
Their main argument had to do with prejudice.
Yeah, and what do you think that, along with delays, does in terms of this whole trial and,
This trial was scheduled to begin in September. I happened to be in court some time ago when that argument was made that it needed to be continued until January. And the court, I remember, inquired of Mr. Weinstein, Mr. Weinstein, do you want to go to trial? I think when the court asked that, the court was really saying, or do you want to enter a plea? But that's not what the court said. The court said, Mr. Weinstein, do you want to go to trial? And Mr. Weinstein responded, not really. So, but this case is not just about Mr. Weinstein. This case is also about individuals who allege that they were victimized by Mr. Weinstein. And so, from the point of view of certain victims, my sense of it is they would like this trial to proceed and not be delayed. Let's get this done. Let's get it done in a way that's fair to Mr. Weinstein, but also fair to the persons who are going to be witnesses and who are going to testify. They're going to take the witness stand. They're going to be probably brutally cross-examined by the defense. Let's move on with this and get it done. And then after that, we don't know how long it will take to get to trial in Los Angeles. I mean, I've been practicing in California for 44 years. A defendant has a right to a speedy trial there and everywhere. It's a constitutional right. But sometimes defendants would not like to have a speedy trial. They would like to delay More often than not, my experience is defendants would like to delay the day the trial happens. There's some rare exceptions, like O.J. Simpson, where they wanted a speedy trial because they thought that the prosecution would not really be prepared, and they got a speedy trial. He was acquitted. Maybe if they would have delayed, he wouldn't have been. I don't know. That may or may not have been a factor. So usually defendants, I would say most of the time, would like to delay the day of the trial, delay potential judgment day. So we'll see. In LA, takes a while to get to trial. I have no comment. I will say I represent potential witnesses. I may represent more than a potential witness, but I'm not going to comment on that at this time. Okay, is there anything else? Thank you.
News there from attorney Gloria Allred, who represents several of Harvey Weinstein's accusers on that sex crimes trial, which is kicking off with jury selection this morning in New York. Let's jump in with some analysis now. Ashley McMahon is listening along with me here on the Law and Crime Network. So, Ashley, we heard from Gloria Allred that she witnessed that cell phone altercation, fiasco, whatever you want to call it, that our Jesse Weber also saw in court, and a sense that, look, this is serious, and Harvey Weinstein needs to absolutely mind his P's and Q's. He has to listen to the judge.
Right. And, oh, God, you got to love Gloria Allred and all her glory. I had the pleasure of meeting her just a few months ago in Atlanta at a conference. She is just exactly on point with everything she says. I mean, what I loved the most about that conference was the little smirk that she gave when she was saying, you know, the judge asked Mr. Weinstein, do you want to have a trial in this case? And he said, not really. And she explained, well, really what the court is asking is, do you want to enter a plea? And is there any good time, for the LA District Attorney's Office to indict him on 2 felonies? Certainly not. But I do think it's very telling that they did it the night before trial. I think timing is everything in the judicial system. And I think it says a lot about what's going on with this case. I think Ms. Allred knows more than the average Joe about what's going on here. She has been such a prolific force of nature in the criminal justice system, for a champion for rights for women. And what an amazing case to have her expertise on. I can't wait to see what's going to happen, and I can't wait to see what she's going to say. Yeah,
the thing that I like the most when I listen to Gloria Allred speak is, look, she represents accusers, and she has a vested stake in the outcome of the criminal case as well, by association through that. But she's also up there saying, look, Harvey Weinstein deserves a fair trial. Let's give it to him. She doesn't want this to flip back around on appeal either. And I think there's something commendable about that spirit within her and the way that she speaks about that. Quickly, Ashley, I want to ask about this as well. We're reading between the lines of what the judge was saying with Weinstein there. You know, is the judge really saying, hey, look, do you want an appeal? Is that what's being conveyed in not as many words? If you're the prosecutor, do you take predatory sexual assault off the table? That's the top charge. And if you're Harvey Weinstein, do you agree to any kind of a deal? Again, this is all hypothetical. We're just spinning theory here again. Do you demand that prosecutors take that charge off the table if you're going to go for some kind of a plea?
I think certainly if you're going to even enter into plea negotiations, the first thing you say is that charge has to come off the table. Now, on the flip side, I think with a high-profile case like this, I mean, coming right off the heels of Bill Cosby, coming right off the Me Too movement and all of this, I think as a prosecution, I think you've got to go for it. I think you have to go in guns blazing and that you do not acquiesce or make any negotiations in a case like this. I think this, for the prosecution, is an all or nothing case. I don't think they offer a deal that is anything less than the maximum. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that LA just brought up their own felony charges. And I think that's sort of them saying, hey, just in case it doesn't go right in New York, we've got you on something else in Los Angeles, and you'll have to come and answer to these. So even if we were to get a plea negotiation in New York State, still got to go back to California for those. So I don't think there's any incentive to plea in this case.
Yeah, certainly. And look, why do cases go to trial? Usually it's because the state isn't offering much of a deal. So that's just sort of a general premise of the way that this works, and it allows us to get a sense that even if those discussions are happening, that's a huge if, that's a huge speculation, but look, they happen. There are discussions in almost every single case. The question is just what sort of offer is there, and if it's not a good offer for the defense, the case goes to trial. We'll take a break here on the Law and Crime Network and come back in a moment with more in the trial of two parents in Ohio accused of murdering their infant son.